It is the pink elephant theory. If the guest wants a pink elephant, get them a pink elephant. If you can't find a pink elephant, get a horse, paint it pink, convince the guest it's an elephant. Do whatever it takes to ensure they're happy. That's it. Are they happy? And we are back. It is the Pink Elephant. I'm Chris Adams. I have an amazing guest actually in a part of the U.S. that I'm very familiar with. Special place in my heart for sure. But I got Riah Greathouse is with us today, an amazing attorney in the Atlanta area doing really, really big things. And welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Now, I got a question for you because I always ask this question because it's honestly out of curiosity. You're an attorney.
Yep.
You have a Greathouse Trial Law.
Yep.
Have you always known that you wanted to be an attorney? Like, was that something as a kid, you're like, that's what I want to do?
No, absolutely not. So as a kid, I think like every kid wants to be, you have dreams of making it, to whatever sport. Mine was
Exactly. What team did you want to play for?
I want to be a Major League Baseball player. I want to play for the Braves. And ultimately I said, my dream job actually would be the general manager for the Braves, even though our current GM is doing a phenomenal job. But I would want to be a GM and assemble this all-star team and just keep the Braves of the 90s going and,
you want to bring Sid Bream back and the guys?
Bring all of them back. But, both of my parents were actually in the legal field. My dad was with the DA's office in Atlanta in Fulton County for over 20 plus years. So he's been, in that arena forever. Then my mom just retired from the public defender's office where she wasn't a lawyer, but she was an investigator and assisted there. So it's always kind of been in my blood where it was a fallback in saying, well, if I don't have anything else to do, then I guess I'll go into the legal field. And that's exactly what happened. I still in undergrad had my dreams of sports. So I said, all right, well, maybe I'll go to law school and I'll be a sports agent. And then, as I went through that, I said, all right, well, maybe not sports agent, and let me just see what goes on. And next thing I know, I'm in law school and then eventually catapulted me to be able to be a prosecutor, which I thought I was going to do for the majority of my career, if not all of my career.
Huh. So, that's so many interesting points for me on that because it's not necessarily what you weren't at like 12 years old. You weren't throwing suits on and like debating at 12, like I'm going to be an attorney, right? Yet you obviously, with the success you have found, and you're passionate about what you're doing. That's for sure. And I think it's a good point for people that are trying to figure it out, right? I think right in society and our culture, it's like people are just searching for happiness and what do I do? What am I trying to do with my life and switching jobs? And you don't necessarily have to figure it out in high school of exactly what you're going to do, right? It's always just having patience and allowing it to come to you as necessary. That's at least that's the way I see it.
One of the things that my parents just instilled in me is just be a sponge, soak up as much knowledge as you can, be as good or as great in as many things as you possibly can, and then eventually you'll find your path. But you've got to be able to knock on as many doors as possible for that opportunity. And that's one of the things that I was able to do.
Yeah. I literally was just having a conversation with someone and they were struggling with kind of this of saying, I just don't know what I want to do. And I was like, well, what are you doing? Like, well, I haven't figured that out. And I'm like, well, just go do something. Like if you don't try things, I could tell you, I end up doing consulting, lifestyle, luxury, hospitality, not even remotely close to anything I grew up doing. I had no one in my family that did this. Like it was not something that I even knew was a job necessarily. And I just kept knocking on doors, like you said, until finally I was like, that's the door. That's the right one. But I would have never known that if I hadn't just blindly knocked. So I think it's a great lesson.
Well, I'll say to even expand on that, one of the things that I have an 8-year-old and I've started him early, ever since he was 4 or 5, I remember saying it to him, be a problem solver. There's money in being the problem solver. So it doesn't matter in what career field it is, what aspect of life, If you are able to be a problem solver, you will make money. Period.
Could
Think about
not.
it from all the way to the guy who pumps out porta potties. Obviously, that's a problem that needed to be solved, and he was able to solve it. And boom, you got a lucrative business. So that's in anything.
Man, you were speaking truth. My team, we were just at a project, and it was a little bit of a struggle, stuff going on, and I had team members like, oh my god, this is this, and this isn't ready, and this is such a pain. I'm like, you understand the whole purpose of our role is to fix things. Like that's why
Yep.
we exist. If things are
Yep.
perfect, they don't call us. Like we
Right.
don't have jobs if things are perfect. Like it's called job security. And so it's like changing your perspective and mindset of the whole reason that we have a company and we're successful at what we do is because we're professional problem solvers. We find ways to
Absolutely.
get it done. So it's a
Absolutely.
truth, 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 my friend. That is for sure. So,
Absolutely.
so you have your firm in Atlanta area. You went to
Yep.
school though in Houston, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
How do you love Houston?
Houston was cool. Well, it wasn't cool. It was very hot. I enjoyed Houston.
Okay.
Houston is very similar to Atlanta as far as the diversity. The food was amazing. The culture, the scene. I liked Houston. I could have stayed in Houston, but when I came out of law school in 2010, that was during the recession,
Yeah.
and pretty much no one was offering jobs. And granted, things were better in Houston because they had the oil and gas, they had the energy to kind of sustain. It wasn't, as impacted as other cities, but the job market was bleak. And my parents being here, I'm very grateful to them where they said, hey, you can come home and figure it out. And that's exactly what happened. I moved, when I graduated, I didn't have a job offer. But while I'm studying for the bar, I said, let me go home while I'm studying. I have a roof over my head. I have some food. I'm not having to pay for it. And that way I can really, focus on passing the bar because that's the most important thing. And then the rest of the things will fall into place. And that's exactly what happened. And because of that, I passed the bar on the first time, was able to get a job. Even before I passed the bar, during that summer, I was able to find a job. And then, set my roots and things were able to take off.
I love your perspective too, man. It's looking at situations and everything says, you know, I'm going to look at everything half full, right? It's not the half empty approach of like, hey, this is a cool opportunity. Most people don't get the opportunity to go back. My parents are there. They're able to help me during this time, which means I can focus on what my future is going to be. A line my dad used to say to me always was, don't be afraid of delayed gratification, right? And I
Mm,
think you looked at that and said, this isn't a bad thing. This is a huge opportunity for me. And you took that and boom, you passed the bar on the first try. I mean, that's
yeah.
huge.
Yeah. I had a coach once that said, do what you have to do now so that you can do what you want to do later. And that's one of those things. And you talk about delayed gratification. And I'm not gonna bash the young generation now because I've got some a few employees that are in that age range, but I think that that's one of the things that we've kind of fallen out of as a society. Everybody wants the now. We're looking to jump to what's the shiny thing now, what's gonna give me now. I want this now and quick. And it's like you never allow for the opportunity to develop. It's kind of like in sports. I don't know if you're a football guy. I always talking sports analogies and everything. My
Very much
my
so.
my team hates it, but I'm like, but you get what I'm saying. It's like a running back, where they have to allow the play to develop. You got to let the hole develop, and then when you see the hole, boom, you hit it hard. And that's
Yeah.
what I think that opportunity is.
Sadly, I have two kids, and I think that when we look at where we're at, and look, I'm not going to turn this into what's the downfalls of social media, but I think it has caused us a skewed perception of what reality is. One, because people only post what the amazing things that happens in their lives randomly. You don't get all the stuff in between.
Right,
And I think everyone's chasing this fake celebrity esque lifestyle of a car, a house, a lifestyle that
right,
is it's not real life. For most of
right.
the people that are posting that stuff, it's not real life. And as a result, I always say people always want what I have. They're not willing to do what I do to get there, right? And
Right.
that journey of what it takes and fighting and the 100-hour work weeks and not having money in the bank and trying to figure out food and all those things that you're forced to go through to get to where you're trying to go. No one wants to talk about that. They only want to talk about the finished result. And I
Right.
think that because we live in this snapshot society of what social media has, that exactly of what you just talked about of we want the instant. It's I just want
Yeah.
that and not willing to go through that process of what it takes to get there because that process too gives you a little bit stability so when you do arrive you know how to behave, you know how to
Absolutely.
act, you know how to treat it with respect versus it's the old adage of winning the lottery and then going bankrupt in 3 years, right? You're not
Handle it.
prepared for it.
Right. 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 No, I always look at social media. It's the highlights. It's your highlight reel that you're sharing.
So true.
Because to go back to what you were saying, it's not sexy footage for me filming myself in a library studying for 13 hours a day when I was in law school. It's not sexy footage for me to clip, me literally being every position at my law firm at 2 in the morning, sitting at a desk in my first condo. That's not sexy footage. So that's not what you're going to see. You're going to see the end result. But the problem is, like you said, people not understanding and saying, well, there was more behind this story. And they take it at face value and say, this is what I want. This is what I want now. You know. So
how much
I agree.
how much are you feel that you have to or you need to use social media just from a business perspective? Forget the personal side of like your life, but I mean we're at a point now from business. If you're not taking advantage of social media, it's kind of a miss. We're not throwing stuff on
Correct.
billboards so much anymore. How much are you
Correct.
seeing that as a direction that you're being forced to, whether you want to or not, kind of move in that direction?
You have to. And like you said, if you're not playing in that space, you're missing a huge opportunity because this is the most efficient way to get in front of potential buyers or your potential avatar, so to speak, that you would sell to your average customer. So yeah, I've had to get on social media specifically in the last 18 months. I feel like a substantial part of our marketing budget has had to go into social media, whereas before, like you said, the traditional mediums or TV, radio, or billboards. And I always said I don't ever want to be on a billboard, but this is like the new billboard, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you have to play in that space. And it's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic, and my marketing team and I talk about it all the time because some of it I'm like, I don't want to post that. This is for me. And they're like, well, you have to show this because people want to know what you're doing. They want to know who's this guy that I'm hiring. And then B, they want to see success. Nobody wants to hire the lawyer that isn't successful. It was an old boss said to me, and I thought it was the most shallow thing at the time. And then I really came to understand what he was saying later. And I was driving a Nissan Maxima at the time, and I loved my Nissan Maxima. It's not to car shame anybody and everything, different strokes for different folks. But he said straight up, no one is going to give you $1 million case when you pull up to them in a Nissan Maxima.
Yeah.
And
It's
it
going to
hit me.
get a haircut with a dude that doesn't have a good haircut.
Bingo. So I think that it really forces you to say this is our brand, this is what we represent, and to put that out and to be consistent with it.
Yeah, it's amazing how much decision making is made on the visual perception of, and
Mm-hmm.
it's sad because you don't want to. You're not trying to fake something or play a part that's not real. At the same
Right.
time, it skews your perception of someone's success or not success or how they handle their business. I just saw a statistic the other day. It said 90% of all social decisions are made by social influence, right? And
Mm-hmm.
90% of decision making is made by social influence. Like that's a staggering statistic to me that says we almost don't know how to think for ourselves anymore because we're just being pushed in whatever direction that the wind is blowing that day.
Absolutely. I'll share a quick story with that. One of the things when we started social media and even before social media and our marketing campaigns, one of the things that I said is I will not be one of those cheesy lawyers that's sitting there saying I settled a case for X amount or whatever million. I said no, that's not who I want to attract. And I had those principles, and it wasn't until my marketing guy said, let me just try something. Let me just have a few of your clients that you've represented where they'll tell how much they got. And that social credibility, as you say, it was crazy. Like once I put, hey, there are real live people and this is their story and what they got, all of a sudden it's like that credibility popped in, and now boom, people are saying, oh, well, I see you got, such and such, this amount of money. I have a similar case. Can you help me too?
Yeah.
So it's crazy the influence that others have on people and the decisions that they make.
Yeah, it is. What do you see? You're in Atlanta. It's an amazing city that has a lot going on. It's one of the bigger cities that we have in the U.S. Where do you see? Where's Atlanta at? I mean, coming out of the pandemic, where do you see it going? Have you seen a shift in the market of the direction of what's happening in Atlanta?
Atlanta's booming. We're back, and it's like I don't know if people during the pandemic said let me move to Atlanta, but Atlanta's
Yeah,
open and it is booming, and traffic is only getting worse. But as you and I joked before we started, it's the gift and the curse because there's obviously job security. With millions of people commuting daily. I saw a stat. I think Atlanta is number one, if either number two. Either way, we're in the top three for traffic accidents in the nation. So Atlanta is booming. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to work. But unfortunately, with people comes traffic, and with traffic comes accidents. So I always tell anyone who's driving on any of the Atlanta roads, the Metro Atlanta roads, the highways, and so forth, protect yourself at all times. Protect yourself with proper insurance coverage, because unfortunately, everyone here doesn't have the insurance they need. So protect yourself and have that, and then keep a proper lookout. Make sure that you're being a defensive driver, and then thirdly, make sure that you know a good lawyer that you always have on hand for inevitably when something does go wrong. Is it something, as it usually will, that you can call and make sure that you're not skipping a beat. So
yeah.
that's kind of where Atlanta is right now.
That's good to hear. The city's continuing to progress and move in the right direction. That's awesome. What
Yeah,
is, as you look at your business and your firm, you have a lot going on, not just at the firm, you have a lot going on outside the firm as well. What direction do you see, the next 5, 10, 15 years? Do you have a clear path on where you're trying to go and what's next for you?
I do. Bigger. I am a man of faith. I believe in an awesome God who can do exceedingly and abundantly more than we could even dare to ask or imagine. So that's always been my personal challenge. Is bigger. Whose problem can I solve today, and how many people can I help? So as long as I'm asking myself that question, I'm always thinking bigger. What is the next thing? What is the best way to allow for our services to reach the masses? And we do that in our firm, and even a new project that we've just launched just this year, kind of a passion project, is it's a business called the House of Great Care. And what it is it's an in-home daycare facility, medical services that we provide to medically fragile children. And these are kids with all types of ailments, spina bifida, wheelchair bound, cerebral palsy, and the list goes on, where we are providing services where someone's coming in and bathing them, feeding them, doing occupational therapy, and a list of other things. And that's completely free through the Georgia Medicaid program. So that's something
Wow.
that we're offering to families. And I'm really excited about it because it's needed services. And so many people are unaware that this exists. So that's my next thing, is making sure we get the word out there to help as many families as we can.
Well, one, I want to say, I mean, amazing that you're doing that. Congratulations to you and your team for putting that in place and finding that avenue and resource for those that need assistance. It does make me curious what what happened, or who did you meet, or who was in your life that you said that this is something that has now become personal and passionate for me for to go find
Sure.
this.
Sure. So one of the things, the dark side of personal injury and what we do is that while many cases we are successful, and when I mean successful, we're able to get whatever the max is from the insurance company, there are also a number of cases where that money's just not enough. It doesn't put it doesn't put that person back together again, and they're left with these permanent ailments, these permanent disabilities and injuries, and they don't have the resources to help them through it. And they're literally left saying, "Well, what's next?" And it's terrible because as the lawyer, I just throw my hands up because there's really nothing I can offer. That's a problem I can't solve. And it just so happened that my neighbor uh, operates one of the largest facilities in Atlanta. And we started talking. He said, "Look, it's not hard. I can show you exactly how I do what I do." And it's just something where I said, "Look, obviously, I enjoy business. I enjoy generating money, providing jobs, and so forth. But this is something where I can say this also fits in my core value of fighting and providing a needed service for those who are in a bad situation that are not because of their own doing." So that's kind of how it was just a perfect marriage.
Tell you, it's enlightening to hear. Look, let's in full transparency. A lot of times there's this stigma around attorneys of, you know, heartless, just going after, do what they have to do. It's not about the emotional side, right? You have a job, you have to get it done.
Sure.
And the fact that it speaks volumes to me that yeah, you solved a problem, but you solved the problem because your heart saw there was an issue. And
Yeah.
look, most of what our team does is really focused in that hospitality space, whether it's luxury hotels or restaurants, bars. And I think what you just said was in every business, even having a very successful law firm, hospitality still means something. Still having a heart for other people is extremely important in really finding value behind what you do. Like, what's that thing
Absolutely.
you go home at night and say, man, I did something for someone today. I helped someone. And I mean, that's awesome, man. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate you saying that.
So, as you expand that and, you know, your company, how you started, how many years when did you start your firm?
Easy date to remember, September 11th, 2015.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you're 8 years now into this. I'm
Yep.
very curious what your vision was on September 15th. I mean, September 11th, 2015. What your vision was then to where you are now. How much has it evolved and changed?
I couldn't have fathomed that we would be doing what we're doing now. And that's what I talk about, that faith and that God giving you abundance and doing bigger. One of the things that I always say is if you're great at what you do and you do right by people, the sky's the limit. And that's just something that I have really, really, really made every effort to do, is be great at my craft and be great with people. You do those two things and great things happen.
You know, I live by my grandfather was a pastor. I live by
I
be a
see.
good person, right? So just do the right thing. It's not
Yes.
about what is it going to cost you, what is the right thing to do, and then
Yeah.
allow that to come back to you a hundredfold, right? And
Absolutely.
be careful to not put a timeline on when you believe that it should return back to you. Just know that you're doing the right thing, and I can assure you at some point you'll be able to look back and go, oh my God, where did this come from? How did I get here? Um,
Yeah.
and it's very cool to me because it's happened to me as well. What I thought I was going to be doing or what I thought the vision was going to be for our company versus a decade later, I never thought in a million years the path I would have gone down. And I think that's important for business owners to always remember is to not force a situation, be nimble, and make sure
Hmm.
that you're keeping your eye on what your client, what the market is telling you versus what you believed it was supposed to be. Is that a fair
Yeah.
assessment?
Absolutely. Absolutely, without a doubt. I think that perfectly sums it up. You could write a whole book on that. I mean, people it's I don't want to downplay because I want to give business the gravity entrepreneurship the gravity it deserves, but I think sometimes we overcomplicate it when it really is as simple as you just said.
Yeah. It's I will tell you, stepping out. You know, when I left a huge company with Ritz Carlton, Marriott hotels, to do my own thing, and
Mhm.
that's not it's not a path for everyone. You know, I believe that everyone was put on this earth for a purpose with gifts that they were gifted, whether they
Right.
realize it or not. And not everyone is supposed to do, not everyone's supposed to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone's
Correct.
supposed to be a millionaire, a billionaire, all those things. You were here for a purpose. And I think where we miss the mark sometimes and where people struggle with finding their purpose and finding happiness is is not focusing on what their purpose is and focusing on how do I achieve a lifestyle, right? Instead of saying like, what's my God-given purpose? What am I naturally good at? And we all have this. And going back to sports analogies, I kind of do the same thing as you. And I use the Van Gundy brothers as my analogy. And I
Yeah.
said, growing up, their passion probably was to be an NBA player. And they would go outside every day from morning until night and shoot the basketball. And I don't care how much they shot, their natural God given talent, they would have never made it to the NBA. And as a
Yeah.
result, like most people, they would have just said, well, I'm just not good enough. So let me go find a job. And they're going to live the rest of their life unhappy because they're
Right.
not doing their purpose versus saying, what am I good at? I'm a great, I see the game a different way. I coach, all these things, and saying, how can I attach my purpose, what I'm passionate about, with what my
Mhm.
natural God given abilities are? And if you can find that intersection, that's where you start to find happiness, and then money comes as a byproduct of it. And I think
Absolutely.
that's the mark that most people miss.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 1,000% I agree.
So, how do people? You know, you talked about this new venture that you have stepped into, helping disabled children, and I know that it's funded through, you said, through Georgia and the Medicaid program. How can
Right.
is there a way for people that are also passionate about this that would love to get involved? Is there something they can do to assist you in that?
Absolutely. They can reach out. It's houseofgreatcare.com. We'd love to provide as many resources. So we're always looking for volunteers. We're always wanting to get involved in the community. And like you said, it's not even about making the money. It's about enriching the lives of others, especially these kids.
Yeah,
So we'd be more than happy to have as many volunteers, or if there's a family that could benefit from our services, we'd love to hear from them and see if we can go ahead and get them in our program.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So once again, the website on that is www.houseofcare.com.
House of houseofgreatcare.com.
Houseofgreatcare.com. It's such a great resource. And I think regardless of what you do and what your day-to-day job is, when you can find outlets of places that you can go and contribute and walk away at the end of the night knowing that you're doing your part to assist individuals that don't have the opportunities that others have, it speaks volumes for you
Mhm.
as a person and starts to bring a little bit more value just to your day-to-day life.
Absolutely. So I'll share a quick story about a failed business that I had, and it's because it didn't check any of those boxes that we talked about before. So we just walked away, completely walked away, took a loss on a mosquito control company, and it was one of those things where, I was working with a franchise broker, and I'm always looking for other investments and so forth. And he said, "Hey, we got this great opportunity. The money is here. These are the profit margins, and they're doing amazing in other territories, and they're the hottest selling brand, and they're coming into the Georgia market. You'd be the first to get in, and it's a great deal." And it made so much sense on paper. But it was something that I wasn't passionate about. I don't care about mosquitoes. I actually, believe it or not, had to take almost like a mosquito bar exam. I had to learn about mosquitoes, go to the community college, and take an exam to get my my license from the state to be able to spray mosquitoes. And
Oh my
while
gosh.
I didn't be able to own the company, and it was a failure. It was a failure. It was a franchise, and there were so many reasons it failed. Mainly, I didn't have a passion for it. It was supposed to just be a moneymaker, and it was run by another company. So we talked about the ability to be nimble, to be quick, to call audibles as needed. Couldn't do that because I was tied by somebody else's rules. and it ultimately ended up being a failure. So within 2 years, we walked away.
Yeah. You
Because
know,
it didn't boxes that we talked about.
it's funny. One, I'm not a fan of mosquitoes in the least bit. That's why I live on the West Coast. We don't deal with that. Um,
Hmm.
so I really wish that would have taken off for you. I feel like it'd be a
Yeah,
big win for people. Um, but failing doesn't make you a failure.
not at
And
all.
I think that one thing you need to be completely secure and okay with as an entrepreneur is the ability to push, fail, learn,
Hmm.
and keep going. Right?
Absolutely.
I use the term with my team when something doesn't go right, you need to be able to really quick hit control alt delete. You need to be able to get on a plane, control alt delete, wipe it away, and keep going.
Yep.
And
Yep. And I think it's also with that knowing when to hit the eject button. Where it was something where the and it goes twofold. It's one of those where I feel like some people don't give it enough time, and then some people give it too much time. Where it was
yeah,
something where we could tell, hey, this is not the move. Let's go ahead and cut our losses so we can stop the loss and move on.
yeah,
And I think it takes that entrepreneurial maturity in saying it didn't work. That's cool. I get it didn't work. Let's move on. Instead
yeah.
of the whole, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to try. I'm going to try. And next thing you know, you're losing the house because you didn't know when to pull the plug.
Yeah, it's so true, and we're kind of the same way. I'm constantly looking for what's the next investment. How can we get involved in something? But I'm like you, where I rarely get involved in something that I'm not heavily involved in,
Hmm.
where I don't have my hands deep into it. One, because I want to understand it. I mean, we have worked our tail off to get to where we are. I started with when I launched this company, I had nothing, I had no investors. So to get to this point to say I can actually invest in things, I want to know what I'm investing in. I want my hands in it. I want to understand it. I want to see we use a term constantly with our team that says where are we adding value? And
Hmm.
if I can't add value to your company and the only value I add is writing a check, then that's probably not a good investment for me. Like
Right.
I want to make sure that we're bringing something more to the table to be involved in something than just handing you zeros. And so I think that's a big thing that I've learned is because I've done the same thing as you, man. Oh, I'm going to invest in this because it's going to give me a quick payout. And
Yeah.
every time I do it, it backfires on me every single time.
Yeah. And that's why I'm a terrible gambler. Like I don't gamble. I've got a buddy who is, I mean, he's the man when it comes to Vegas. He's hitting, he's winning, he can the sports bet. I mean, he started a nice business consulting of it. Not for me, man. It goes whatever I do. And he just finally said, dude, I'm not going to give you any more picks because
He cut
I
you
feel
off.
I feel like I am the missing link. And it's not said with arrogance or anything, but I've learned that the things that are successful are the things that I'm able to have my finger on and control and able to move and strategize and have some say in versus, as you said, those investments, the mosquito business. I wasn't involved in that. It was my money. I hired a team. All right, cool. Got y'all go do this. And it failed. So what
Yeah,
I've learned is in order for it to succeed, I have to be involved. I have to put my say in it. And it's not to pat myself on the back and say I have the magic touch, but I've learned that I'm the missing ingredient. I have to be involved because it's my vision and efforts that have been successful in pushing my goals forward.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. How do you balance as we've grown and I have these tentacles that now come out from our company and I have individuals that are leading these divisions, but at the end of the day these are all still my baby, right? And I'm still heavily involved in every aspect of the business. How have you learned how to balance your time between all the different things you have going on to ensure that it doesn't slip away too much and you lose that Midas touch you talked about of you being involved in it?
Yeah. I have a really good team,
Yeah.
and that's where it is never lost on me that because I have amazing people around me, I am able to expand and stay organized and put my finger and always have a pulse on it. And what I mean by that is to be involved with everything doesn't mean that I have to necessarily be in the trenches. I heard a quote. It was on the show Billions. I don't know if you've seen that,
Oh,
but
great show.
there's a quote where it was during the takeover. They were trying to woo a client, and the client wasn't interested. And he said, "There's a reason that generals aren't in the trenches." And it's like that jumped out at me. So often, it's like you want to be involved because it needs your vision, it needs your strategy, but that doesn't mean that you have to be in the weeds doing everything yourself.
Yeah.
And that's where I am with all of my businesses, where I have my level of my wife is awesome. I have an amazing operations manager. I have an executive assistant. I have what's kind of my cabinet, my brain trust. And then by working through them, I'm able to keep the pulse on the rest of the team members in the other projects that we have. So
So
that's
you're hitting the nail on the head of how a successful business needs to be running, to not sustain but also continue to grow. And I'm a huge advocate and very passionate about leadership in general. And what does that look like? What does that mean? And all the things you're speaking about it's great leadership. And so I'm curious, as you have very senior level people that work, other attorneys that work alongside you, what does leadership mean to you? Like, well, how do you lead your team? And you just described a little bit of that, of things that you do, but do you really focus in on and think about the strategy behind your leadership approach?
I do. So I was, believe it or not, I was a leadership minor in college, leadership studies, where we studied all the great leaders from generals to presidents and social leaders, Dr. King and President Kennedy, Lincoln, and so forth. And the one thing that they all had in common is vision. They all had a vision about what they wanted to accomplish. And I think that's where it starts, in setting the vision. Once you figure the vision, you can figure out how to get there.
Yeah,
But think about so often where these quote unquote leaders, they don't know what they want. They don't know what they want to go. They're a moving target. So their team can never get calibrated because they're never calibrated. They're never focused on what they want. They're kind of going wherever the wind blows them. And
yeah,
obviously, that's chaos, and your team will never be able to succeed. It's like in sports where hey, our goal at the end of the year is to win a championship. It's the same thing in business where I say, hey, this is our goal. This is what we want to double our revenue. This is our revenue last year. This is what we want to do. We want to service 1,000 new clients this year. And I'm just throwing out a round number. If we say we want to do 1,000 new clients, and we want to make sure that out of that 1,000, our score is a 4.8 out of 5. That's our minimum standard. And that's where we know, all right, cool. Now we know that's our vision, that's our goal. How do we dial in? How can we fill in the gaps to make sure that we're heading to that path? And I think
you're
that's what
speaking. You're speaking my language. X, do we call X to Y by when? And do we have a scoreboard along the way? Right?
yeah,
It's don't overcomplicate what we're doing. And I know for us, it's also when you look at the hospitality industry specifically. We had a huge issue, like many other industries. So I don't want to say it's specific to hospitality, of just the workforce is no longer there. You don't have people that really want to be in that industry. And I truly believe a huge part of that is, and I've been a huge focus of this past year for us, is understanding what is culture and the culture of your organization. And
yeah,
so much emphasis was put on, the reason that that they're not at your company anymore is because of money. And the reality is, yes, everybody wants more money, but that's not the root cause of why they're necessarily not wanting to be there. It's
right,
because, are you really giving them something that gives them purpose? That says bigger than money. It's bigger, that says I come in every day for a real reason versus just swiping a clock to say I did a job today. And I think part of that is really understanding what leadership is. It's coming in every day, and your team feels the culture that you live on a day-to-day basis. I say most organizations are phenomenal at creating culture, right? Most people nowadays, I'm going to start a business, and before they do it, they write what their mission statement is, and they've got their pillars of what they're going to focus. They're great at creation of culture, Where they struggle is the cultivation of that culture. Are you living it day in and day out, that 9 months later, that new employee that you have or team member looks and goes, nah, this is how we live our
Right.
organization day in and day out. And
Yeah.
what you're doing at Greathouse is that you've established a culture, you've cast a vision for them, but you don't just cast the vision and walk away. You are living it day in and day out. So they truly understand that roadmap that you've set for them.
Yeah, and one of the things that we noticed, we had to take a deep dive in who we are, and you hit it on the head. You said, "What's the mission? What's the vision? What are the values?" But one of the things that I realized that we were doing is that we were hiring for skill and we were neglecting the intangibles. So we were bringing in people saying, "Hey, this is a rock star. They can get the job done. They know the legal in and out," but they failed because they weren't a culture fit. They didn't embrace the core values that we had. So one of the things that we started to do is say, all right, well, let's hire on the values and we can coach up the legal side or the work. And when we switch from that, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's so much better, and we've got a better product. So it's like we have people who otherwise weren't as quote unquote as skilled, but had the coachability, and they're killing it. They're rock stars. I mean, we've got a great community, and that's what we call it. And that's why I've been intentional. You've heard me say it. My team, my team, my team. We're a team. I don't say my employees, my staff, my workers. They're a team. How do they fit in? And it's my job to be able to pick people and say, you know what, you're the missing piece to our team, or you're going to add that value that we need.
Man, I feel like you and I are so similar in how we operate our business because we do the exact everybody says, oh man, I want to work for EAG. How do I work for EAG? And we literally just brought on a designer. And for months we were searching for this designer and we had hundreds upon hundreds of people that were applying for this job. And every time I would look at the head of our design side and I go, how do they fit with us? How will they fit with the team and the culture? Don't tell me their resume. Don't show me the renderings of the stuff they've designed. Tell
Right.
me the person. I want to know, does the person fit with who we are as a brand and a family and a team? If they fit there, let's keep the conversation going.
Yep.
But we, and that is beauty to hear from somebody and I think that it speaks to your success. It's why you continue to grow. It's why you continue to have people that are attracted to you, the law of attraction, because one, you're doing the right things and you're focused on the right things at your business. You're not
Yep.
just chasing money. If you're chasing money, you're never going to catch it. You're doing the
Yep.
intangibles of what leadership really is, and your organization is thriving because of it. So, man, you're the person that people want to work for, and that's a big thing.
I appreciate that.
So, as we are closing this out, I want to know what is the one thing if someone's listening right now, whether they're just finishing up law school, maybe they're in the middle of law school right now, they're trying to figure out what to do next, maybe they're just an entrepreneur trying to figure out their way. What's a bullet point or two that you would say, here's a couple of nuggets for you to hold on to at this point?
I'd say the first, and we've talked about it time and time again, the vision. You got to have the vision. One of the things that we always start off every year, my family and I, we have a tradition where uh, New Year's Eve, we have a great family dinner. We're watching all the shows, but we're doing a vision board. We're setting, what do we want to accomplish this year? What do we want
Love
to
that.
attract? And I think that when you do that, you bring that goal closer to reality. You've gotten it out of your head. You've gotten it on paper. You're already starting to bring it to fruition. I would say the vision is the first. The second one is go for it. Just go. I think so often we're asking why or how or when. Just go, and that comes from the sense of in church we're always asking God why. He's just like, just go. I'll figure out the rest. Just go. We hop on airplanes, right? We don't know how it works, but we just go, right? Same thing with business. Just go. It'll fall into place. So I think with that vision, and then that just the word go, and then the last thing is that consistency. Those three things, that consistency, day in and day out, you're living, you're breathing, you are obsessed with your vision, where you don't have any choice but to bring it to fruition. I'd say those three things, you do that no matter what it is, whether it's you wanting to be an entrepreneur or even just to be the best employee you can be, whatever it is, you do those three things, you are going to succeed. That is the law of nature. You cannot fail. You do those three things.
Man, I tell you, I feel like you and I could just sit and talk for hours.
Ooh.
One, getting something on paper, I could
Mm-hmm.
not agree more. I do the same thing with. I have my leadership circle, my circle of influence, I call, where I put down physical names of individuals that I need to make sure that I'm focused on and spending time with, because they're phenomenal in areas that I want to be better at. And so whether it's reading their books, getting a 10 minutes on the phone with them, meeting them for lunch, I just need to be in their presence to see what they're doing on how I can be better. And putting that on paper, like you said, literally writing down where you're going, it's I can't recommend that enough for individuals. I love the go piece. Stop thinking, trust the process. And for
Yep.
me, the consistency that you talked about, for me, that's creating discipline. It says that if I can do something long enough and create the right kind of habits,
Yep.
if I can create habits in areas that I no longer have to think about it because I naturally just do it, it opens me up for new things. Right? I no longer have to focus on that, so I can continue to become better and better somewhere else. So, man, you're a rock star. You're literally one of the best in the business. I can't thank you enough for allowing us to get a few minutes of your time, just to impart some of this knowledge and wisdom on those that are happen to be watching. So I can't thank you enough, my friend.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Of course. So really quick, as we go off, if people are looking for you, they want to find you, they want to follow what's going on in your world. What's the best and easiest way?
So you can find our website, our law firm website. It's www.atltriallaw.com. Or if you're interested in the services piece, the Medicaid services, that is houseofgreatcare.com. Or you can follow me on Instagram at Riah .greathouse. I'm sorry, I don't even know my IG. It's Riah underscore greathouse .esq.
I
That's
love
it.
it. I love it. Thanks again for hanging out with us here on the Pink Elephant. I am Chris Adams. Everyone knows you can follow us. The website's www.ellisadamsgroup.com, at Ellis Adams Official, or myself at Chris Adams underscore EAG. Look forward to hanging out with you next week, and hopefully we have somebody just as great as Raya on the show that's giving you some nuggets for you personally and for your business. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.